Greetings, watchers one and all, the Watchful one here. Halloween. Halloween. Makes me wish Halloween wasn't basically cancelled by the rest of the world being on fire. I feel like a concerned friend having an intervention for a holiday. But you know what, screw it. Just because the world's on fire doesn't mean I'm not gonna celebrate Halloween. It's my second favorite holiday and I'm gonna give it the love it deserves. I feel like there's a sex joke there somewhere, but I'm too lazy to figure it out. But this year, there's 5 weeks in October leading up to Halloween, so you know what? I want to do something special. And I can think of nothing more special than getting you involved. Now don't worry, I'm not gonna pull an Oprah Winfrey and make you look under your chair, because all you're gonna see is me. No, instead this month is dedicated to the people out there that aren't into horror movies but want to get into them. Maybe you just want to get into it in general. Maybe you have a significant other that you want to please and get into their interests. Or maybe you just have that one friend that won't shut the hell up about his favorite horror movie and you want to make him shut up so you can get into it and watch it for yourself, Jake! Regardless on your reasoning, this month is for you. As every single week this month, I'm going to be looking at something that I think is a great entry point for people. Be it a game, a manga, a movie, or whatever. And speaking of movie, that's where the first video is coming in. There's a lot of horror movies out there. Some of the first horror movies ever arguably were back in the 20s, with stuff like Hunchback of Notre Dame and Nosferatu. And not only are they extremely popular nowadays, but they're also very profitable as they can be made very cheap. So it sounds like a pretty daunting task to try and break it down, right? Wrong, because that's why I'm here. I spent days inside my lab trying to figure out the best formula and the best movies to try and watch for newcomers. I did my best to crack it and break it down and bring it all to you guys. But I got bored and then I went with the top 13 list instead. So anyway, yeah, top 13 gateway horror films. Now obviously making a list like this was a daunting task, so I had to set some ground rules. As horror is, well, a horrifying genre, I needed to pick movies that were light on gore. Basically the equivalent of easing them into the shallow end of the pool, rather than yeeting them in the deep end. But at the same time, despite that, they still had to be mostly horror related. What do I mean by that? Well, basically they have to be horror movie adjacent, but they don't necessarily have to be in the genre specifically, if that makes sense. Basically, if you could make the argument that it's mostly horror related, then it's eligible for the list. And finally, no TV shows. Sorry, but a TV show is a much bigger commitment than, say, a movie. With a movie, at most you're gonna be wasting about 3 hours. A TV show, yeah, not so much. But if you have to see a TV show, I'd recommend Stranger Things. It's a great entry point. But enough stalling, let's get to the list proper with the number 13. You know who sucks? Clowns. Clowns suck, don't they? They're spooky, they're creepy, they don't talk, they're just weird. Especially that jerk Pennywise, he ruined clowns for everyone, didn't he? But you know what? Sometimes clowns can suck and still be awesome. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, that's a lie, I'm not a mind reader, but I know what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking I know what you're thinking right now. And what you're thinking right now is, Watchy, what the hell is this? Well, I'll tell you what it is the cultiest of cult classics. Move over, Critters. Fuck off, Critters 2. This is a true cult classic. And heck, you could argue it's the first killer clown movie too. It came out a full 2 years before it. And yeah, while that series had Tim Curry as Pennywise, it cannot compete to this movie. I mean, first of all, if you're noticing from these clips, these clown effects look awesome. To be fair, they're also the reason why it's not higher because these clown effects are kinda creepy, but at the same time, they're also really goofy, which is the reason why it's on the list in the first place. They're kinda like those pictures of cartoon characters if they were made hyper-realistically. Ugh, get out of here. And they should look good because the Chiodo brothers made these. And if you don't know their name, you'll definitely recognize their work, as they did the special effects for Critters and Ernest Scared Stupid. And this is about that same level, it's not really that scary. Okay, some people might find this scary if you have a clown phobia. Not to mention there are definitely some creepy moments in here like this scene. But it's really hard to take it seriously as a scary movie. And honestly, I think that's to its benefit of being a gateway horror film. It knows it's stupid, but it's having all the fun in the world doing it. And surprisingly, unlike other movies where special effects directed instead of just doing the effects, this isn't a case where the effects overshadow the story because the story is actually pretty good too, having some horror moments but being mostly goofy overall. And there are actually some very clever touches. For example, the clowns need to track down these 2 teenagers, so they make a balloon animal and make it into a bloodhound. They also have popcorn bazookas that fire popcorn that's actually baby killer clowns. And killer shadow puppets. Do I sound mad? It's because I am. I am mad that I lack the talent to make this shit up. Chiodo brothers, you make me mad with how talented you guys are, and I have to put you on the list for that. However, if you're gonna watch this, I recommend getting as many friends as possible. Just go full Mystery Science Theater 3000. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Shh! Don't talk during the movie.
Sorry. And if I still haven't convinced you, I have 2 words for you. Clownzilla. That is all. You know, I actually find it kinda funny that Scooby-Doo of all franchises can last as long as it has. I mean, when you really break it down, it's the exact same formula every single time. In fact, allow me to reveal the super secret formula to making a Scooby-Doo episode. Step 1, have the gang arrive at a location. Step 2, reveal the monster. Step 3, have the gang get chased by the monster. Step 4, have someone get kidnapped, preferably Daphne. Step 5, set the trap. Step 6, Scoob and or Shaggy mess up the trap. Step 7, unmask the villain. Step 8, I don't fucking know. Step 9, profit. I kid, but that is basically the formula. But every once in a while, they break the formula, and when they do, they make something zombie-tastic. How can I not put this on the list? I'm sure this is everyone's childhood. This was the first thing Scooby-Doo related after such a long hiatus and after so many spin-offs. And man, did they come back in a big way. First of all, holy crap, this animation. Like, this is insanely detailed. And that shading, holy crap. But a pretty faces and everything, and thankfully this has personality to spare. As this takes place a couple of years after the original series ended, and now the gang wants to get back together and spook some ghosts. But this time they're real. Which, you know, they actually have seen real ghosts in the show before. Look at Scooby-Doo's 13 Ghosts. But that'll never take away the first time you see that zombie's head pop off its body. Or seeing Shaggy and Scooby's life force literally get ripped away from them from these scary cat ladies. And I would also like to remind you all that this is a G-rated kids movie. 90s Scooby didn't fuck around. But that's kind of why I think it's a great gateway movie. It has horrific elements, but it's still Scooby-Doo. It still has the lighthearted Scooby-Doo humor and moments of Shaggy and Scooby, while at the same time mixing in some other stuff. And it really shows that the characters have grown. Yes, actual development from these characters. Even Daphne gets some development. I suppose if I did have some critique, I couldn't give less of a shit about Fred and Daphne's relationship. Something that they would really drive into the ground as these movies went on.
So, Freddy, why do you always pair us up?
Well, I've thought about that for the longest time, and there's never been a good time to tell you. Maybe it's time that I...
Oh, would you two just fuck already? Also, the inclusion of that Bayou man with the weird pig. Yeah, that was weird. I don't know what that was about. But that doesn't take away from the rest of the movie. It's honestly so good, I wish they would explore it more. Too bad we never got a sequel. Never got a sequel!
Not TV! Hello, sweeties. It's me, Elvira, your spooktacular hostess with the mostest.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna fire my editor. Yeah, good luck with that. Screw anyone who says horror can't be romantic because it sure as hell can be. Case in point? Come on, I had to put at least one Del Toro movie on this list. He's my boy. He's honestly one of my favorite directors, and I was actually kinda surprised how much I liked this movie. Don't get me wrong, I knew I was gonna like it anyway because, well, again, Del Toro. What I wasn't expecting to have this being probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Hell, this is exactly what I would have imagined the creature from the Black Lagoon should have been if the Dark Universe didn't collapse on itself. But you're not here to see me gush about a movie. You wanna know why this is a gateway horror movie? Well, it's also the reason why it's not any higher. I'm debating if it even is a horror movie. Don't get me wrong, it has a creepy monster in it, but it's mostly a romance movie. But that's also why I think it's probably one of the best gateway movies ever. I mean, the monster is a little creepy, but it's also very human and relatable and kinda cute. Not to mention, it just looks awesome. I mean, holy crap, this was 100% a suit. But I think a lot of the reason why I think people will love this movie is because of the main character. For those that haven't seen it, in the movie, this woman is deaf and therefore can't hear and uses sign language throughout the whole movie. And I know what some of you are thinking, that doesn't seem that impressive. But what if I told you the actress actually was deaf? Yeah, I'm not joking. She had to act this whole movie out without speaking a single line. That is damn impressive. Not to mention you can relate to her a lot more because you're projecting onto her. You can relate to her struggles at work. You can relate to her petting her kitty. You can relate to her wanting to bone a fish man. I'd say maybe not that last one, but furries are a thing, people. But not to mention, this movie is just beautiful, honestly. Like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore, I just want to look at it. In fact, you know what? Let's just finish this entry watching some beautiful fish sex. Eat your heart out, porn. I'll just play the intro. Yeah, you kinda knew Gremlins had to be somewhere on this list. How can it not be after all? Not only has a lot of people's childhoods probably been filled with this movie, but I'm sure it's also the movie a lot of people point to whenever they say they grew up with horror movies. Even if Gremlins isn't a straight up horror movie, that's not to say there aren't some horrific images in this movie. I mean, the melting gremlin scene, good god, that is gonna traumatize some kids, even if you can't see the string now. I just ruined the scene for you, thank you. But seriously, the highlight for this movie is easily the scene where the gremlins take over the town. It's absolute carnage and it's also funny as hell. And that's the most I want to show you about the climax just because I don't want to ruin it for everyone. I suppose my only real problem with this movie is, well, if you've seen it, you can probably see this one coming. The scene where the love interest explains why she doesn't like Christmas. Like, it's so needlessly dark and out of nowhere for what's relatively a lighthearted movie. But honestly, it's far from enough to completely ruin this movie. So give it a watch. I mean, come on, how can you say no to that cute little face? 1 little 2 little 3 little mogwife. Hey, you guys want me to give you guys repressed nightmares? Look at this picture! Yeah, I bet you forgot about these, didn't you? Well, we're talking about it again. Yep, that movie's on this list too. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the movie. I don't know why I preference it as the movie. I mean, what else could I be talking about? The visual novel? Yeah, definitely not. Much like Gremlins, this is another one that, honestly, I believe is perfect to get people into horror movies. And just like Gremlins, it's not exactly a straight-up horror movie. Okay, it is pretty much a straight-up horror movie, but you know what I mean. It's very much not as bad as most other horror movies. So if that's the case, why is it higher than Gremlins? Well, I have 2 reasons for that. Number 1, it's based off a property I'm sure a lot of people have already heard of, so it already has kind of a legacy for it. I mean, sure, nowadays Gremlins is pretty much a very major popular franchise, but it's still an original property. There's no real weight to it. The only real weight to it as a franchise is if you've seen it already. Scary Stories, on the other hand, a lot of us grew up with these books. Hell, I grew up with these books, and it's the reason why I went to see it in theaters. So I feel like it'd be easier to convince someone by going, hey, you remember this thing from your childhood? It's got a big screen movie, go watch it, you filthy animal. The other reason why I consider it a better intro to horror movies? Well... yeah, this movie does not fuck around. I mean, for a kids movie especially, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's meant for older kids clearly in the same way the books were. But at the same time, for kids, regardless of the age range, it's still pretty intense. I mean, all I have to say is the zit, and I'm sure a lot of you are cringing right now. But that's why I think it's perfect for a gateway horror movie. It can prepare you a lot more for some of the rather intense stuff horror can bring, while at the same time showing all the benefits of horror by having characters that are very relatable. Characters that you very much care for when they get the axe, and can tell stories that you very much can't tell with other genres. You know what I'm surprised hasn't been used to convey horror a lot more? Animation. I mean, on paper it seems like a great thing. Horror can distort and change things that live action just can't do. But on the other hand, animation, specifically Western animation, kinda has to deal with being cute and colorful. Both aesthetics that can't really work with horror movies. That's not to say animation is devoid of that kind of stuff, I mean anime has that cornered. But Western animation just kinda doesn't do horror and that kinda sucks. But there is at least one type of animation that has that cornered, and yes, I am talking about stop motion. And before you start screaming Nightmare Before Christmas, get that shit out of here, I'm not that predictable. Yes, Watchful, clearly the most hipster of all animation lovers, chose Coraline over Nightmare Before Christmas. Though low-key, I was tempted to put all of Laika's horror-based anime on this list because they're honestly all great. Even their non-horror-based stuff, everyone knows Kubo is truly the best anime. Okay, joking aside, Coraline I kinda just went with because it was the one that essentially got things started. Plus it's the one I feel perfectly balances lighthearted comedy and children's movie with straight-up horror. It's able to still keep things as lighthearted as a kid's movie can be, while at the same time not shying away either. And it's all built upon probably one of the most relatable child characters I've ever seen in animation, Coraline. That's not an exaggeration, I seriously consider Coraline one of the greatest child characters ever. Also, I mean, come on, how can I not appreciate this amazing stop motion? If I didn't have the patience of a goddamn goldfish, I would seriously try stop motion myself. You might notice there's a severe lack of oldie movies on here. It's not that I hate oldie movies, it's just that I'm saving them, okay? So be patient. Oldies are extremely tame by today's standards and didn't rely on blood because they weren't colorful. I gotta save them for later on the list. That being said, I will also throw you all a bone and put the first black and white movie on this list. Oh, look at that, the Godzilla fan put a Godzilla movie on the list. How predictable. Well, I never said I wasn't a hypocrite, now did I? Okay, joking aside, I actually debated long and hard on what Godzilla movie I could put on the list, because the Godzilla continuity is kinda bullshit. It has like 3 to 4 different complete reboots on the continuity altogether, with Godzilla switching between a villain and a good guy on a day-to-day basis like it's just his mood swings. So that means there's like 3 different alternate dimensions of the Godzilla universe, technically 4 if you want to count the American Godzilla, and no, I don't mean the 1998 Godzilla, that wasn't Godzilla, that was Zilla, clearly, if you believe Toho that is. But ultimately, I decided to go with the OG original, because you uncultured swines need to watch some black and white movies. I don't care if you think they're boring. This shit isn't boring, you're boring. But seriously, I don't even know if this can be considered a horror movie all the way, but it is about a giant monster, so I decided to ultimately count it. Especially since it's honestly so good, I want to give it a pass anyway, because the original Godzilla is less just about a giant monster movie and more about the nature of nuclear warfare. Yeah, I'm not even joking, Godzilla has metaphors. The whole movie acts as a metaphor towards nuclear annihilation in general, which, you know, it makes sense considering this was made less than 10 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That Godzilla is literally a walking metaphor for the danger of nuclear holocaust and annihilation. The fact that his footprints are literally nuclear should have given that away, honestly. And don't get me wrong, I get it, I can see how this movie can be way too serious for a lot of people, but honestly, it's more of a drama than a straight up monster movie. And I feel like that is a perfect way to show how deep horror can really be, that it can truly be more than just a goofy monster movie. Though that's not to say the goofy monster effects aren't awesome. Like seriously, that's a guy in a suit, and up until this point, this kind of effects have never been seen before in movies. So in that way, it's extremely revolutionary and probably led to a lot of other amazing effects in movies later to come. So if nothing else, watch Godzilla because that's a goddamn legacy movie and it deserves your respect. Now I better move on before the radiation just starts to kill me. Alright, enough of this serious stuff. Let's get back to the more goofy end of things. And as luck would have it, we have another movie that's based on a book. And oh man, if you thought you were gonna get hit with nostalgia with scary stories to tell in the dark, get ready for this! I know, I had to put Goosebumps somewhere on this list. I mean, how the hell could I not? You gotta understand, the books were basically the reason I got into horror movies in the first place. They made me see how fun horror can be while at the same time why it's okay to be scared and why it's good to be scared. So you can imagine how excited I was when there was a movie announced for it, and how even more excited I was when Jack Black was in it. I love Jack Black. Jable Senpai noticed me. But seriously, that was perfect casting making Jack Black the author of the goddamn Goosebumps books. Move over Joaquin Phoenix, this was the true casting call of the millennium. But I don't just want to gush about Jack Black for 90 minutes even though I totally could. Honestly, there's one and real only reason why I would put this on the list. Fan service. No joke, if you grew up with the Goosebumps books, you have to watch this out of obligation. Like, one of my favorite things is to just get a bunch of people who have read the books and just point out all the references. We got the gnomes, we got the prankster ghost, we got the mantis from Shocker on Shock Street, which I don't think there actually was one there, but I don't care. And Slappy is the main villain? Shut up and take my money, damn it. Honestly, I feel like a peak level dweeb considering my one and only gripe with this movie is there was no monster blood. Like seriously, how hard would it have been to work in monster blood? I honestly thought that's what we were gonna get in the end, but instead it's the blobbery and everything. Like, who cares? Like, I haven't read that book. Have you read the book? Do you care? I don't care. I feel like my peak dweebum is just gonna take over my body if I keep harping on this, so I'm gonna move on. All I'll say is that for a kid's movie, this one is pretty damn good if you grew up with the Goosebumps books. Heck, my dad really liked this movie and he did not grow up with the Goosebumps books, so let that sink in. Never thought I'd say the day that Goosebumps was a generational movie. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a bit of a trend of horror movies trying to cannibalize Christmas. I don't know what it is. Maybe we're trying to get back at Christmas for cannibalizing Halloween and Thanksgiving. And don't tell me that's not happening. Stop putting the Halloween decorations next to the Christmas decorations. It's not even Halloween, you wall fuck! I'm sorry, that got away from me. What was I talking about? Alright, Christmas horror movies. Honestly, I was tempted to put a lot of different Christmas horror movies on this list. Problem is, a lot of them go full ham on either being gory or straight up horror, or they're just ridiculously stupid like Jack Frost.
Who's out there? Well, it ain't fucking Frosty.
No, if I want to do this, I want to go with the one that perfectly shows off Christmas horror at its best. And it's been brought to us by the guy who brought us another great holiday film, Trick or Treat. Yeah, that's right, we're talking about Krampus. Now, I made a whole giant-ass review of this video, and if you want a much more in-depth reason on why I love it, go check that video out. Hey, Future Watch, do the thing right now. God, I hope that asshole did it. But I suppose I do have to at least try to sum it up, so here's my best summary. Krampus tells the story of a nice little family who has a lot of big problems. Like any other family around Christmas time, they are super stressed. However, when one of the kids tosses away his letter to Santa, things go to hell in a handbag. So what can I even say about this movie? Well, for one thing, the atmosphere chills your bones. No joke, when I saw this in theaters, I was literally getting cold. Or maybe the AC was just on full blast. In any case, all this snow does make you feel very cold. And much like Gremlins, it also has a lot of the same strengths in that as well, in that it does have some pretty scary imagery, but it's very tame. Honestly, arguably the scariest scene in the movie is when the toys attack. And even then, it's really not that bad. In fact, this is mostly more of a comedy than a straight up horror film. Like seriously, if this was released a few years ago, it could have easily passed as a family film like Gremlins. However, the reason why I consider it above Gremlins is because it's much more consistent with its tone. Now, don't misunderstand me, Gremlins still has some great moments of comedy and horror, but it has a hard time balancing the two out as explained in that one scene. Krampus, on the other hand, it's much more consistent, able to balance some lighthearted comedy moments with some nice, genuinely good scare moments. Even if they're not all scary, they are still genuinely suspenseful. But the glue that holds it all together is honestly the characters. What's funny is that you start off hating a lot of these characters as they're very selfish people. But then you slowly realize they're not bad people, they're just under a lot of stress is all. I mean, fuck man, it's the holidays, anyone would be under stress. I guess the final thing I would have to talk about is the amazing monster designs here. I mean, these are some damn creative designs and they all fit within the theme of Christmas. Especially Krampus. Good God, this is probably the best Krampus design I've ever seen in a movie. I think the only one that comes close is the Krampus design from Christmas Horror Story, but yeah, no, it's got nothing on this. And heck, this is one of the only recommendations I can give that you can actually watch around the Christmas season. Yeah, no, seriously, this is one of my Christmas traditions, no joke. Well, and a Christmas Vacation. What an amazing combination. Okay, considering I didn't put Nightmare Before Christmas anywhere on the list, I gotta make up for it by putting at least one of Tim Burton's movies on this. And I had a lot of choices to go through, but at the end of the day, I had to go with the most obvious one, and I think you'll all agree with me. So everyone, say the name.
It's showtime.
Yep, Beetlejuice. I'm not sure if this one would be considered a horror movie to some people, but Google says it is, so I trust Google. And I'm totally not saying that so Google will actually push my video in YouTube, and that YouTube won't completely destroy my demonetization on this video. Okay, joking aside, it does at the very least have some horror-based elements, so I'm counting it. I mean, come on, it's got ghosts, it deals with death, it's got the underworld, why wouldn't it count? Not to mention, it's just hilarious. It's easily the funniest movie I'm probably going to be putting on the list. As of recording this, I very recently rewatched it and it still holds up even today. Not to mention, like anything Tim Burton related, the designs especially hold up. Like, there are some insanely creative designs here and I actually kinda love it. But you know what, let's not kid ourselves, there's really only one reason I'm putting this so high on the list. And I think you all know what it is. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. Like, just everything about Beetlejuice is amazing. First of all, Michael Keaton is just killing it in this role. This is honestly a role I don't think he even came close to topping until Birdman came out. Like, he's just hilarious. He's energized. Like, it's kind of amazing how much energy he has in this role. And he can still pack some pretty damn menacing scenes as well, like when he's finally summoned. But speaking of which, it never loses sight that he's both menacing and funny at the same time. Showing off his true power, but never losing sight of the fact that he's still at the end of the day just a goofy demon. I mean, is it any wonder why they made a TV show about this guy where he's one of the main characters? I mean, I could totally buy him performing at some point. If you have Peacock, it's actually free on it right now, so go watch it. I mean, obviously watch all of these at some point, but watch Beetlejuice specifically, because it still holds up. I can say from personal experience. And of course, we can't forget easily the best scene in the whole movie.
You bunch of losers! You're working with a professional here! Nice fucking models!
Oh sure, when he does it, he gets a PG rating and a laugh, but when I drop an F-bomb, I lose all my fucking money! You know what I miss? The Universal monsters. Yeah, you know, Dracula, the Wolfman, all those people. I mean, yeah, we tried to bring them back with the Dark Universe, but that has literally tried and failed like 3 fucking times already. I just want the Universal monsters to come back, come on people. So if a semi-modern movie wants to take them, interpret them, and use them however they want, then I will take it. Especially if it's as good as this one.
We're the Monster Squad.
I'm sure half of you are probably saying, oh thank god, and half of you are probably wondering, what? Well trust me, this is a good one. It's literally the Goonies meets the Universal Monsters. And for you younger whippersnappers out there, it's like Stranger Things meets the Universal Monsters. And if you don't know what the Universal Monsters are, well then your parents failed you. I'm sorry you had to hear it from me. No, but seriously, I actually do adore this movie with all my heart. I suppose when you break it down logically, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but this is literally a movie where the token fat kid kicks Wolfman in the nards and says Wolfman's got nards. If I wanted logic in this movie, I'd slam my head against the wall until I stopped. Logic should be on vacation, damn it, I want goofy, gory fun. And while this isn't gory, it is goofy and fun. Not to mention, it's just pretty interesting to see these modern interpretations of all the Universal monsters being put together like this. Honestly, Monster Squad feels like the Avengers of the Dark Universe that we never got. In fact, I'm retroactively making this the Avengers of the Dark Universe in my head. You can't stop me. I mean, how can I not? Look at these designs. They keep the aesthetic of the classic monster movies while at the same time being their own thing. Like, that can't be easy, yet this movie pulls it off very well. Also, Dracula calls a little girl a bitch. And that's funny. Wow, I am a literal man-child. Oh well, if not being a man-child means not having to like this movie, then I'd rather be a man-child. Fuck you, adulting. Oh well, if Universal Studios isn't gonna give us the Universal monsters anytime soon, we can at least go back to the classics. Yep, the OGs that basically started the horror genre, or at the very least popularized it. The Universal monsters. You know them, you love them, and they had to be on the list. They basically started the genre. This is basically mandatory watching for anyone who wants to get into it. It's basically the equivalent of calling yourself an action buff and never watching The Terminator. Universal Studios basically revolutionized the genre as a whole by bringing these movies to the limelight. And also gave us people that are still remembered as amazing actors even in a genre that's basically ignored by Hollywood. Lon Chaney Jr., Bela Lugosi, and of course Vincent Price. They may be gone, but their legacy is still remembered, and they're still remembered primarily for these movies. Hell, there was a time when playing Dracula or the Wolfman or Van Helsing or Dr. Frankenstein was considered a badge of honor. One that was later given to Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing when they revived them with the Hammer films. And if you want to find out why that was the case for a long time, these are the movies to look at. Now obviously I'm recommending them all, but there's obviously a lot of them, so here's a couple ones I personally recommend. If you want something a little more lighter, then Creature from the Black Lagoon is a good starting point. The Bride of Frankenstein is probably one of the best sequels ever made. Of course, I'd still recommend checking out the original. The original Mummy is still pretty good as well. And of course, I can't overlook the original Dracula. Honestly, I could just go on for hours and recommend every single last one of them because they're all great jumping off points. So I should just stop before I list the entire movieography, even though I kind of just did already. Also, movieography, is that a thing? I'm making it a thing now. But anyway, before we finally get to the number one that you've all been waiting for, some quick honorable mentions just to pad it out a little bit longer. I almost put this on the list because I don't really consider it scary by today's standards, but it is still pretty gory, so yeah. This is honestly one of my favorite horror movies ever, and it almost got on the list just because of that, but again, it's super fucking gory. Plus, I feel like it's much better when you're actually acquainted with the horror genre as opposed to a newcomer. This one was a request by Rosie Shevers, and honestly, I kind of agree with her, but there were other movies I liked a little more. Easily one of the best vampire movies ever, but again, it's a little on the gory side. One of the best zombie movies ever made, but I would say make this a sophomore movie, not a first starter. Probably one of the best demon movies since The Exorcist, and it's actually pretty tame, honestly. But ultimately, other movies won out, so consider this number 15 or 14. Probably one of the first vampire movies ever made, and for that, I at least want to give it an honorable mention. And that's where I'm going to be ending the honorable mentions because I could keep going, honestly. Besides, you've waited long enough, let's get to the proper number one. We left this pumpkin in here. Hang on, I'm gonna put you back outside. And just playing this music, come on, let's get something better on. Anyway, if any of you are a fan of this movie, you probably saw this coming a mile away. Halloween. The movie that many consider to be the best in the genre, and I know for a fact made many people a horror fan. Now don't let the fact that it's a slasher film deter you, it is actually very tame by today's standards. And a lot of this because they didn't have the budget to make the kills extremely graphic. This is the filmmaker's film because it's low budget, but it's not cheaply low budget. And at the same time, it encompasses everything I love, not just about the holidays, but horror movies in general. The kills, while not graphic, still feel very personal and feel like they have impact to them. The larger-than-life monster, well, Michael Myers has that down to a T. He's human, but he's also ethereal. He feels like he could be literally anybody, and that's part of the reason why he's so scary. It's also just dripping with atmosphere. Like seriously, if you ever want an excuse to watch this movie, it's literally Halloween. Go watch it. If you watch only one movie on this whole list, make it Halloween. And I know slasher movies have a bit of a reputation, but trust me, Halloween is nothing like Friday the 13th. Or Nightmare on Elm Street for that matter. It's its own breed, and its own breed that it can honestly suck in even the fussiest of anti-Halloweeners out there. Because it's more than just a slasher film. It's genuine drama and suspense. The kind of drama and suspense that honestly most dramas wish they had. All combined while being condensed and perfectly encapsulating the horrors of the suburbia. Like, this movie is literally so good I could go on, and honestly it kind of deserves its own review, which you're gonna be getting later this month. So all I'll end this by saying is when the Halloween spirit finally infests you, watch this. But honestly, watch any of the movies on this list. Horror honestly means a lot to me as a genre, and I honestly think it gets a bad reputation. I want nothing more than for people to love it like I do. And if I can convince at least one person this month to watch horror films, or read horror comics or anything like that, then I have succeeded. But this is just the beginning, people, so be sure to subscribe and tune in because all this month, every single week, I'm going to be tackling something horror related from a different medium, not just films. And next month, we're going to be tackling comics as we take a wild delve into the world of Junji Ito. But that's all I got for you for this list, so thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that button and stick around because all this month is going to be a very busy one for me. And of course, check out any of these movies, and when you do and if you agree with the list, then be sure to tell other people about it. Let's make some more horror hounds this year after all. And of course, all that standard stuff. If you really liked it, then check out my Patreon and you can help support me directly and monetarily. And every so often, I'm going to be playing horror games over on my Twitch channel, so check it out. All those links and many more will be in the description down below. But that's all I got for you, everyone. I am the Watchful One saying let's delve into darkness this month. I will catch you guys for the next video.